Paul, if you might, I think we already started the recording, haven't we?
We have.
All right, good deal. Welcome all the attendees. Thanks for joining us here during your lunch hour. I'm hoping everybody's got a great lunch scheduled. And if you would, please share, because I didn't get a chance to get some. So just pass it down the squares a little bit if you have some leftovers. That'd be great. We are looking at introducing our new MPC members. We have a couple that I know of. I just know of one so far that I've already given this counselor kind of a hard time, is Counselor Beth Blackwell from the city of Springfield, best city in the county, in my opinion, but I'm sure she can add to that. Any comments real quick there, Counselor?
Hello, good to be here. I see a few familiar faces that are on the screen. And for those of you who we have not had the pleasure to meet, I am Beth Blackwell. I'm Springfield City Councilor and was just appointed to the MPC. So this is my first meeting and happy to be here. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And I was just looking for the other elusive square, our newly appointed Eugene Mayor Karen Knutson. I'm glad you got on there because I was going to look around and I see your face now. So if you'd like to introduce yourself and say hello to the group, welcome.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much, Commissioner Karen Knutson, Mayor of Eugene. And this is my first meeting with you all. So thank you for the warm welcome.
Sharpen your pencil, Mayor. There's a lot of information coming your way. All right, well, good. Am I missing anybody else? Any else new to the fun? I see Mayor Van Gordon still looking on his phone with his fingers in the camera. Nice look there, Mayor. Good deal.
Hey, it's my iPad. It's my iPad. It's completely different.
Okay, well, there you go. All right, sounds good. There is some attendance. We have a quorum present. Looks like we do.
We do not have a quorum, I don't believe yet. Commissioner, we are, I believe, only have 5 members present and 4 members present. And we need at least 5.
Well, fortunately, we're not making any decisions, it looks like. Looks like we're just
nothing other than approving minutes.
Yeah. We'll have to postpone approving the minutes then. All right.
Dave, I want to note for the record, the city of Springfield showed up with all its members, unlike the county.
I'm totally with you on that one. I am at a loss for words, and I have no big baseball bat of which to hunt our missing ones down with. So thank you for pointing that out. So anyway, I'd like to also officially call the meeting of the Metropolitan Policy Committee to order. Today's Thursday, February 6th, 2025. And again, welcome to all. I want to ask if there are any adjustments to the agenda. Mr. Thompson, what do you think?
Chair, there's no further adjustments that I'm aware of, and I will note that we should now have a quorum.
Oh, we have a quorum now. All right, good deal. Is there any announcements from the MPC members before we start? All right, you're awful quiet. I like that. And let's move into our fourth item on the agenda, our comments from the audience. Not sure if we have any audience members that want to make comment, but they can do so by raising their virtual hand, and Paul will get you to the appropriate microphone square. Anyone want to make a comment?
Chair, there is nobody attending other than members and staff, and I don't see anybody raising their hand.
Wow, look at that. That's unusual. Like it. All right, we're cruising right through this. So if we have a quorum, we have our December 5th, 2024 MPC minutes on the floor. Traditionally, we can ask for a motion, but I read in Robert's Rules of Order that we don't necessarily have to have a motion. All we have to do is ask if there's any objections or changes or modifications to the last minutes. Is there any changes or modifications? Seeing none, that means that the minutes of December 5th, 2024 are approved. Thank you very much. Now we are looking, now that we have a quorum and maybe we don't have Councilor Groves with us, I'm just kind of maybe look for head nods of folks if we want to postpone this vice chair election to our next meeting. If so, I'm happy to continue to do this meeting, and then we can wrangle Councilor Groves into the chair position when he gets back next month.
I think that would be great. And okay. I haven't told Beth that she, may end up being vice chair here. So you might as well give me a little bit of time to warn her.
That's kind of what I was thinking. Good work. Good work.
Maybe let me get some meetings under my belt first. How about that?
Yeah, no, that's not the way it works, Counselor. You just got it. Yeah, it's deep into the pool stuff here. Yeah. Okay, so let's postpone that off, our elections of chair and vice chair. and we will do that our following meeting as per head nod. So we are cruising right along in here to our item number 7. Looks like Kelly's going to be very busy today, giving us all the information we need. So Kelly, you can go at your own pace, but let's go ahead and look at that regional transportation plan update, and you can go ahead and introduce that item if any more information and go with it.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. My name is Kelly Clark. I'm a principal transportation planner here for the Lane Council of Governments and the Central Lane MPO. And I am first going to share an agenda item about our regional transportation plan update. And I want to make sure that this is going before I go any further. Okay, are you able to see my screen? Excellent. It's half the battle sometimes. So with this presentation, we kind of considered it an opportunity, since it's the first MPC meeting of the year, to review the foundation for this regional transportation plan, or RTP, give an overview of what we've been working on over the past year, and then what we have upcoming. And feel free to ask any questions along the way. So just some overall scope of this work. The Central Lane MPO is the lead agency for the regional transportation update. It's a federally required product for every MPO across the country, and ours must be adopted by January 14th, 2026. The process that we're going through to update this plan represents a coordinated planning process with all of our partner agencies that you can see here, from Lane Transit District, the Oregon Department of Transportation, the cities of Eugene, Coburg, and Springfield, and then Lane County. And we're carrying out the 3 C's of Metropolitan Planning Organization, our responsibilities as an MPO. Those 3 C's are to conduct our work in a comprehensive, cooperative, and continuing manner. And these principles are required by federal law, and it's ingrained in everything that we do, and it's the basis for our planning process in our urbanized area. The RTP establishes our regional goals and priorities and is based on all of the community feedback and our partner agency direction. MPC then allocates federal dollars based on this direction. And so we just really want to take a moment to highlight some of the regional programs and projects that have originated from the RTP. Some of the programs include the Eugene Springfield Safe Routes to Schools program, the Safe Lane Transportation Coalition, transportation options like campaigns like May is Bike Month and Walktober, and then the Be Safe, Be Seen campaign. And these programs are all focused on RTP goals, including transportation options and encouraging people to walk and bike, creating a safe system and a livable region in general. There are also several capital projects, and they're widespread in their scope in the RTP. A few examples are listed here, and they're seismic bridge retrofits throughout the city of Eugene, the Coburg Bike Hub, the Springfield Mill Street reconstruction, the Lane Transit District Santa Clara Community Transit Center, Lane County's Beaver Hunsaker safety improvements, ODOT's Springfield Main Street Bridge over the Willamette River project, and for all of the jurisdictions, walking and biking network improvements. Those all start as a project in the RTP before they're able to be implemented out. This work also embodies all of the work that goes into the RTP is also a regional resource. It includes regional data, analysis, and future conditions forecasts that are then used to support local projects and plans, including local transportation system plans, bike plans, land use plans, and as well as local development projects. And we like to set the RTP up as a funding strategy for grant funding opportunities. By setting it up to align with potential funding, we're more competitive in advocating for very limited resources. A recent example is our Protect grant that the MPO was awarded in partnership with Lane County. It's a $5.3 million grant that's focused on surface transportation resiliency throughout Lane County. Of course, we're awaiting now federal we're waiting federal outcomes to know if this grant funding will be executed, but it is a good example of how the RTP was able to support and advocate for us going after this funding. And I'll shift now a little bit to actually just what are the basic federal requirements for this plan. It must be a long-range multimodal transportation plan, represent a coordinated planning process, represent the regional's goals and investments. It needs to have a 20-year horizon, and ours will have a 2024 planning year horizon. So everything is set to that condition future year. It needs to be consistent with local, state, and federal requirements and plans. It needs to contain a financial plan. It needs to have a performance-based planning and programming framework. And bottom line, it's needed to keep our federal transportation funds coming into our region. It has a lot of content. The existing enforced casted conditions, that includes information on just our general location in the world, central line demographics, land use and employment base and future year estimates, information on the equity equity indicators that we're all interested in, safety, including crash data and other types of safety-related data, the basics around the transportation network, so all of the modal networks that make up our vast system, and then environmental and natural hazards, and how do they all kind of relate and correlate. The plan also, like I mentioned, contains goals and objectives for the region, performance measures and targets, systems gaps and needs analysis, environmental analysis. It contains a project list with capital projects as well as programs and studies that we anticipate the potential for federal funding over the next 20 plus years. It measures performance and how we're doing, and I'll talk a little bit about that more on the next slide. It contains a financial plan and then a lot of regional data. So that's a lot of content, but I do want to take a moment to highlight that it follows a performance-based planning and programming framework, which is a federal requirement. And it's intended to be a strategic framework to reinforce our regional goals. Are the investments in the RTP really achieving the goals that we want to see it achieve? So it includes project evaluation and criteria to assess alignment of the transportation projects to the goals, and an investment plan. It has ongoing monitoring, evaluation, and reporting on system performance to help ensure that we're doing what we say we want to do, and that it informs future cycles of planning, like how do we adjust to do better. The current RTP was the first to have this framework. And so we're kind of building on that framework to be able to do some more of this ongoing reporting that we need to be doing. And we're working on some refinements to enhance it in this RTP. And then you can see on the slide the system, the RTP's goals, and they're based on a lot of community feedback. Where does the community see the priorities? Where do we want to prioritize our investments? And those are around transportation choices, safety, security, and resiliency, healthy people and environment, equity, economic vitality, reliability and efficiency, and then system asset preservation. And upon the direction from MPC at our last RTP update, we did not prioritize these goals in any way. They're all of equal weight. And that's how we treat them throughout the RTP. So we kicked off this project in April of 2024, and since then have returned to MPC every time that MPC has met over the last year to provide project updates, to seek feedback and direction. And this slide is intended to give some key highlights of what we've been talking about over the past year. We've presented and documented the federal requirements and existing conditions. We've developed a public engagement plan and are implementing that currently. We conducted an analysis to see, are there other ways we could better integrate triple bottom line principles of sustainability? And that was through a federal tool called Infrastructure Voluntary Evaluation Sustainability Tool, a fun acronym, but INVEST is a better way to say that. And we're addressing the recommendations that came out of that as we move through all of the components of the RTP. We've also conducted a regional travel barriers and benefits survey and then I had the consultant present the findings to MPC for that study in October of last year. We're updating our travel and land use models. We are currently refining the goals and objectives and performance-based planning and program framework. We initially brought that topic to MPC in October, and then MPC approved our refinement process. We have a public engagement process underway to inform the outcomes for that refinement, and we'll bring this back to MPC in the next couple months. We're working on estimating our forecast conditions based on a lot of work in coordination with the Portland State's Population Research Center and the Oregon Economic Department. And we're updating our list of projects, programs, and studies. And that's also informed by both public engagement, but also by what's in local transportation system plans, corridor plans, like what's already adopted in our region that this RTP needs to reflect and be consistent with. So we're working with our local advisory committee to update that list. I mentioned one of the first tasks when we began this work was to develop a public engagement plan. And we have since been working on implementing this plan and the strategies that we identified in it. Some of the key strategies are to come back monthly to MPC and to seek your direction and feedback. We maintain a project website. We have a contact list for those interested in receiving regular updates and opportunities to provide feedback. I mentioned we conducted the travel barriers and benefits survey. We currently have an open house open through the rest of this February, and we're seeking participation in that through social media and press release communications. We have project posters posted throughout the region. We mailed project mailers to some Title VI communities of concern households, asking for their participation in the online open house. And we're presenting to elected bodies and advisory boards as we're invited and have the opportunity to talk to them. And the full list of the outreach that we've done is in your cover memo. Some of the next steps that we'll be working on and bringing back to you at MPC here are the refinement of the goals, objectives, and performance framework, evaluating systems gaps and needs, and that's based on both community feedback, where are the barriers that people are seeing in our community, and the system analysis that we'll do once our travel models are complete. And again, bringing that back to this body as well. We'll be finalizing the list of projects, programs, and studies, measuring performance and developing a system performance report, and then developing a financial plan. And moving forward with our project timeline, kind of highlighted where we've been and where we are. We're going into system performance measurement over this spring. We'll be coming back to the public to share results of what we're hearing and ask, did we get this right? And then moving into the drafting and adoption of this plan in the fall. And that is what I wanted to share today. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Great, Kelly. Great job. You looks like you're right on track as far as time goes.
Yeah, we feel good about the timeline.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Good deal. Any questions or comments for Kelly on the RTP plan and going forward? Yes, Pete, what do you got? You're muted there, Pete, so help us out there, buddy.
Brilliant. But it works better this way. Thanks. So first of all, I'm just going to introduce myself real quickly to people who may not know who I am. I'm Pete Knox. I'm on the board of LTD. I'm filling in today, but I may be that may be changing. That I may be coming here more permanently to MPC. But anyway, I just want to comment that number one, I'd like to thank LCOG for coming to our strategic planning committee meeting last month and talking about this and giving us a nice overview of the transportation plan. As we're starting to work on our own long range mobility plan, which is going to be starting. Well, the work is already going, I think, and we're just going to really be talking to the public a lot more in the later this year. So, but thank you very much for your presentation.
Great. Welcome, Pete. We're gonna have to get you an MPC monogram T-shirt or something to join the crowd. Good for you. Good having you. Anyone else have any comments on the regional transportation update? All right, Kelly, looks like you're ready to move to our climate-friendly, equitable communities report. For those new folks, that's our climate-friendly goals of lowering our greenhouse gases by, I think the number's what, 30% by 2050? Is that what we're targeting? Correct me if I'm wrong. That number seems to sound good.
We'll let our lovely consultants here provide all those good details.
They can sparkle the numbers. Go ahead, Kelly. Thank you.
And I'm joined today for this presentation by our consultants at Parametric. So I'll let them introduce themselves, but they've been doing a fabulous job working with all the partners in this project through this effort to develop an implementation plan for our Central Lane scenario plan, which Tracy and Ryan will help to explain that. But I'm going to bring up the PowerPoint that they have provided and let them introduce themselves.
Yeah, while Kelly is pulling up the presentation, I'll start by introducing myself. I'm Tracy Lunsford, and working with Kelly and ODOT and the rest of the jurisdictions in the Central Lane area on developing these performance measures, targets, and implementation plan. My colleague is here with me today. Ryan, if you want to introduce yourself quickly.
Hey folks, Ryan Farncombe with Parametrics, consultant team, project manager. Thanks for your time.
Okay, so Kelly's managing the slides for us. Thank you, Kelly. We'll go ahead and go on to the next one. So today we just want to provide an overview of the work, an update on the different measures and targets that we have been working with, and then have a little bit of discussion with you, and then talk about next steps. And Ryan is going to go ahead and give you the overview of the work.
And before I do that, I did want to provide a quick opportunity for Brian Hurley, who I think is on this call as well, to introduce himself.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Ryan. Brian Hurley from the ODOT Climate Office. I am the ODOT representative on this side, and I'm supporting the work here. We also have Cody Meyer from DLCD, who is also listening along and will be able to answer any questions, hopefully. So thank you for the time today. Appreciate it.
Thank you both. Next slide, please. So these next couple slides, these are things that if you've been at a past meeting where we've talked about this, you all have seen these before, but just a quick reminder so we're all on the same page, especially since I know there's some new folks too. So the purpose of this process we're all engaged in is to chart a path towards reaching the region's greenhouse gas reduction target, greenhouse gas emissions from transportation, which is set in the OARs at 30% reduction over 2005 levels by 2050. Next slide, please. So what we're doing with this process is, I think many of the folks on this call were around and part of the prior Central Lane scenario planning effort that happened back in 2015. And so what this process is doing is it's refreshing that preferred scenario, which contains a number of strategies intended to reduce greenhouse gas emissions from transportation. As well, in addition to updating the Central Lane scenario plan, we're also being responsive to those to the new climate-friendly and equitable communities rulemaking, and doing a couple of other things along with that. Developing performance measures and targets to track progress towards emissions reductions goals. We'll be developing a scenario report, rather an update to that scenario report that refreshes the strategies and actions towards reducing emissions. And then jurisdictions are going to be tasked with amending their comp plans and TSPs when they get to those to reflect those performance measures and targets and strategies. Next slide. So reporting requirements is part of this effort. So there's a couple of things. One, there's a major report that the region will submit in the years that a regional transportation plan is adopted. And I just want to say that major report is perhaps not as, don't let major trip you up. We have a great form for this report that we will be sharing that will ideally streamline the process for reporting for all of you. But the major report basically covers the performance measures and the targets, and then includes discussion of how jurisdictions are making progress towards the outcomes that the performance measures capture. And then in the intervening years, when a major report is not due, a minor report, which is essentially a very short form, and Brian could speak more about this if we wanted to, is due, which provides a brief update on progress. Next slide. And then finally, before I hand it back over to Tracy, just a note about roles and responsibilities. To say that LCOG overall is providing coordination, facilitation, and data for this process. We have a jurisdictional project management team, which includes staff from all the jurisdictions you see there that are providing the kind of day-to-day advice and guidance to us, the project team, as we develop this work. You all, the MPC, are helping us confirm how we're going about all this. And then ultimately, per the work plan that LCOG submitted, the MPC is responsible for approving the performance measures and targets that ultimately end up in the updated CLSP implementation chapter. And then finally, ODOT and DLCD, who are both here today, are providing ongoing support for us as we work through all of this. And I'll pass it to Tracy.
Yeah. So here we want to review the performance measures and targets. We have brought draft performance measures to you in the past, and there have been some changes since the last time you have seen them. And this is the first time that we're bringing to you draft targets. So in your cover memo, we outlined all of these measures and targets and noted where there is general consensus among the among all of the jurisdictions, and where there are areas that that are looking like there will probably be some further updates or changes based on some of the comments that we're receiving from staff. So please know that these are still in draft form, but they are updated. There has been some evolution and lots of work happening here. And then I guess another thing that I'll note, I think, let's go ahead and go on to the next slide. I think I have more context for you. So today we want to discuss the draft measures and their targets, and then hear from you if you whether you think these are on track. I'm seeing a hand up.
Tracy, I think you might want to hear from someone already. Sean Van Gordon's got his hand up, if you don't mind us interrupting. Thank you.
No problem.
I can wait if it would make more sense for you. I have a question about one of the performance targets that was in the packet.
If it's all right with you, why don't we address that as we get to it so everyone will hear about it and be on the same page? Thank you. Okay. So go ahead and the next slide, please. To remind you, with the requirement that we're tasked with meeting, you have to report on the performance measures from your approved scenario, as Ryan was outlining with the major reports and minor reports. And so some of these measures have targets for the region as a whole, and some of them are targets for individual jurisdictions. Mainly Eugene and Springfield, and so I'll highlight to you who the targets are applying to as we go through each of the targets. And also important to keep in mind here is that the performance measures are aligned with the Central Lane Scenario Plan, and then also with showing progress toward meeting that overall 30% greenhouse gas emissions reduction goal. And then the targets are based on achieving the preferred scenario that was set in that Central Lane Scenario Plan, and that we've confirmed to be on track to meeting that 30% emissions reduction. Next slide. The targets can be allocated either partially or wholly to the jurisdictions or measured for the region as a whole. And we do note that Coburg has opted out of reporting as allowed by the OARs due to its size. And so, excuse me, the targets that you'll see will either apply to the region or Eugene and Springfield as relevant. And then also note that some of the targets are still draft, and those are noted in the memo. We are finalizing the modeling using an updated version of Vision Eval, which is just used for transportation modeling, and it's required a little bit of translation from the modeling that was done in 2015 to make everything work in this updated model. And so we're just finessing to get it right so that we're not under or overshooting the targets. And we're using Vision Eval as a model to help us identify some of the data points that we're using in this target setting. But do note that you will not be needing to use Vision Eval modeling in order to do the ongoing reporting that's required. This is just to help us set up what that preferred scenario looks like and get some of the data points in order to set those targets. Next slide. I also wanted to remind everybody that as part of the CFAC requirements, we do need to have some equity measures. And so in general, the way that equity measures look is they are looking at the intersection of the measure with the high disparity tracts that are identified in the ODOT Social Equity Index. So these are referred to as underserved population neighborhoods. So it's generally a zoom in to see how how each measure is tracking in those particular tracts. You can see the high disparity tracts are the ones that are the darkest purple color here on the screen. So when I'll highlight the equity specific measures as we go across those. And I think one more context slide before we get on to the actual measures. So next slide, please. Thanks. So just to summarize, the targets are set based on achieving the preferred scenario, which is consistent with the 30% reduction in greenhouse gases by 2050. Equity measures and targets narrow in on underserved population neighborhoods to check in and make sure that they're not getting skipped and that they're getting the benefits of all of this work in their communities as well. And then we are working with the jurisdiction staff to finalize these measures and targets, and then we'll take your comments to them as well as we're working on finalizing these. So that's all the context that I have. I think it's time to dig into the measures and targets themselves.
Tracy, real fast, one last thing I wanted to add was just to emphasize that, again, since I know there's a couple of new folks who haven't heard this before, just that in all cases, when we're developing these measures and the methodologies for them, we're keeping an eye on making sure that it's replicable and not too onerous for anybody to replicate this work in the future. We, the consultant team, are doing the initial baselining and the target setting for this, but then it will be the responsibility of the jurisdictions to do the updates later on. So we're very keenly aware of making sure these are things that are using readily available data and things like that. Sorry, Mr. Van Gordon, so you got your hand up.
Yeah, a question, and maybe you don't know, is ODOT or DLCD sending funding to jurisdictions to do that work?
I'll have to defer to Brian or Cody for that.
To do what work, Mayor? Can you?
Well, the comment he made was that it was going to be up to the individual jurisdictions to keep all this data up to date. And my question is, if it's up to the jurisdictions to do that, who's doing that work, and is the state sending funding to do that requirement?
Understood. Thank you very much. So there is no funding coming from ODOT to give to the cities to perform these requirements. The minor report, the cities, Eugene and Springfield, have already completed the first one. So you should know the level of effort that goes into doing those. And then the idea, as was mentioned, with this major report that is due each year following the update of the regional transportation plan. The idea is we have a streamlined methodology and reporting template that city staff can just update each time it is due to DLCD. And as Ryan just mentioned, our performance measures, the starting place was all of your currently existing measures. So hopefully some of these are familiar and not new to you, and they recreate the same, or excuse me, they use the same data sources. So we're not recreating anything or doing new, or hopefully we are not recreating or duplicating or new work that the city staff is already doing.
Okay, so the short answer is it is a requirement that we have to do that ODOT is not giving us money to complete.
Correct. I cannot speak for DLCD.
Well, if DLCD will tell me that if it's a transportation requirement that you need to, that ODOT should be providing money. And I know this is not your thing, but all requirements from the state that don't have funding attached to them are extremely challenging for jurisdictions to complete. And so
very much understood.
And
very much understood. I will say that ODOT is providing all of the funding for the scenario planning work and the work that you're doing right now.
Yeah. So if you can continue to just pass that feedback along, I mean, I'm not going to just, yeah, I know.
Good. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, let's go ahead and get started on the measures. We have these organized by category. So we're going to start with active transportation. This one is highly represented in the central lane scenario plan and also for overall planning. So there are five measures in this one. They're split up into 2 slides. We have the first 3 here. The first one, active transportation network increase. This is really looking at completing the active transportation network based on current RTPs. And this one applies specifically to Eugene and Springfield. The second measure there is the equity measure related to the first, and that really zooms in on underserved population networks too, and for the same measure, just a zoom in. And then active transportation 2 is shared micromobility originating within the urban growth boundary. This includes bike and scooter share, and then any other future, if other future options for micromobility are included. And that's just trips that originate within the jurisdictional UGB boundaries. And this is specific to Eugene and Springfield. And I'll also note as we go through here that we did put the draft baseline and targets in the cover memo, but since many of them do require a little bit of tweaking, we didn't want to highlight them here on the screen, so you can look at the cover memo for some context for what those targets will look like, and we'll note where there is, you can see in the notes there where there is general consensus. So just on this screen here, we're seeing that the first one has general consensus, and we're just confirming a few things to be able to finalize that one. With the equity measure, that one, there's general consensus among the jurisdictional staff. And then with shared micromobility trips, we will be updating the targets, the baseline and targets, with some new data that just came available that records 2024 traffic, so that we are getting the most up-to-date baseline information for you there. Next slide. So the next ones that we have are active transportation 3. This is access to jobs and services through transit and active transportation. This is pulled directly from the RTP, and our work will be to to see how to break this out from a regional to specific to Eugene and Springfield. But otherwise it's completely consistent with the RTP, and we have good consensus on that one. And then the fourth one there is mode share. This is daily trips taken through active transportation. It applies to Eugene and Springfield. And the regional transportation model is under development and expected this spring to be updated. And so with that update, we will update the baseline and targets using the most up-to-date information. So we do have some drafts in there for your review, but know that that we want to get you updates with that, with the new model that's coming out this spring. So those are the active transportation measures. And I see a hand up.
Thanks, Tracy. This is Mayor Knudsen. I just want to clarify, do you want us to hold our questions till the end after we go through the whole table, questions and comments?
Let's see.
Happy to do that. I just don't want to not ask a question now if we're going to move out of.
Yeah, we do have
transit.
We do have some time set up at the end to talk about all the measures, but which might be, why don't we save them until the end? That way, if we don't kind of get stuck on active transportation and not view the rest of the measures.
That's what I wanted to check on. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We'll come back to you at the end. Okay, so next slide. This is our transit measures. And there are 3 here. These ones are, of course, working in partnership with LTD. The first one is level of transit service, which is annual fixed route bus revenue miles per capita in the LTD service area, and this is a regional measure. And there is a little bit more discussion needed on this one, a couple different ideas for options to adjust this one, but we're discussing with the rest of the jurisdictional staff here on this one. The second one is access to frequent transit. This is households within a quarter mile of the frequent transit network and applies specifically to Eugene and Springfield. In this one, we are looking at providing a little bit more definition, and we did update this one since the last time you saw it. But we are working with LTD to make sure that the target setting is based on their best information. And then the last one here is the equity version. And so again, this is a zoom in on the underserved population neighborhoods for access to frequent transit. So those are our transit measures. Oh, and forgive me, we do have a couple more of those. So on the next slide, we do have one more transit measure with an equity measure attached. So the next ones here, transit 3 is transit stops intersecting with safe and convenient pedestrian facilities. So we have a lot of consensus with the jurisdictions on this one, and will be with some suggestions of adding more definition around safe and convenient, making sure that that's well understood. This is specific to Eugene and Springfield and is really about the number of transit stops that are on the pedestrian network. And then the equity measure of that is, again, the zoom in on those underserved population networks to make sure that they are also getting, that those residents are also getting safe and convenient access to frequent transit through pedestrian facilities. So those are the transit measures, and then we can move along to the transportation system. And transportation system is household-based VMT per capita. This one is a regional measure, and based on the regional travel demand model, there is good consensus on this one. We have two categories here. Parking is the number of parking stalls. This one is specific to Eugene since that is what the models are identifying with paid parking. And then this one is has a lot of conversation still happening. So I would say this one is still very much under development and likely to change. Just a note there on that one. And then it's been kind of difficult to narrow down the right parking measure that makes sense and is easy to calculate with available data. The next one is transportation options. This is the final measure that we have. And this one is measuring the number of employees participating in a group pass program. This one is likely to expand to not just include group passes, but really all transportation options. And so that's the major change that we're seeing with this one. But there is general consensus on including more transportation options than just group pass programs. So those are the measures that we have. And on the next slide, we have some framing questions for us. Generally, we're looking to see if the draft performance measures are on the right track and if the targets are on the right track. And I don't know, I'll let you moderate who's asking questions.
All right. Well, thank you, Tracy. Is that time for questions? I think Mayor Knudsen, you are first in line to come back with your question if you'd like.
Thank you, Commissioner, and thank you, Tracy and Ryan. Sorry, lost you for a second on my screen for the presentation and information introduction. I don't know if these are questions so much as maybe observations and thinking as someone new to this conversation about the integration of these performance targets with other work that the City of Eugene is doing, because we do have some very robust goals around climate action and sustainability and the health of our transportation system and how it supports economic development and neighborhood vibrancy. So a little bit of what I'm offering is from that perspective, I think, but maybe you all could offer some feedback as to how these kinds of questions are or are not integrated with this work. First thought is that when looking at the information around active transportation goals and also mode shift, and this connects to household VMT, one of the things that I'm wondering about in terms of notes are two other issues that are of significant importance to our community. One of them is the benefits that we all receive when driving our vehicles, when robust transit exists, and when people can choose an option other than driving, because it removes the congestion that people who are driving experience. So one question is related to how that capture of congestion reduction relative to moving towards these goals and achieving these goals is translated to the public, so that we understand the benefit of these transportation options and systems as both something that relate to our personal choice and affordability and accessibility to all of our daily needs, right? But also that we understand the benefit to those choices existing for other people when they're not appropriate for a particular day or a particular use. So just a basic question about translating this work relative to congestion, especially as we do expect our community to grow. I talk with a lot of people about our housing needs and about our need to make sure that we are supporting economic development and the development of our built environment. to meet community needs, and having great transportation options is a big part of that. A related question. So first question about, essentially the holistic benefits of more active transportation options. Another question related to the metric of affordability. And oftentimes when talking with the public about housing and transportation costs together, I've referenced the H&T calculator as a place where people can understand, like, how much is the average household spending on transportation annually in Eugene, costs? How much is the average household spending on housing? And that relative to this work, because so many of the transportation options, transit, being able to walk to things that are nearby, being able to bike to things that are just a little bit further away, those are also lower cost transportation options, so they have an affordability component. Is there any way that that is captured in this work, so that we're able to not just speak to the larger benefits that track to the climate-friendly aspects and the equitable aspects, but also to the pieces of both of those goals that relate to cost of living at the household scale?
Loaded question. Anyone want to tack that on? Ryan, go ahead.
So I was going to tackle number 2 first, Karen, or Mayor Knudsen, excuse me. So I think your point about affordability is a really great one. And we don't have any explicit measures that account for the cost of transportation in this. We have modeling tools that can certainly help us understand that, right? For example, our vision eval model and our transportation demand model can help us understand the number of miles traveled by personal vehicle, right, based on these actions, and that can be directly translated into transportation costs, right? So I think in my mind, and I think affordability is something that I think there's an opportunity to capture in the implementation chapter that we're going to be updating for the Central Lane Scenario Plan. Because to me, that is the place where we capture the kind of bigger picture of what this all means and why we're doing it. So that would be my suggestion. And we will be coming back to this group with that implementation chapter.
Great. I appreciate that. And what you mentioned also about the modeling, if some of those first pieces of work are going to be things that the City of Eugene, Springfield, Coburg can use going forward, then just having that as a reference point or as a benchmark, I think could be really helpful. The third piece, and this will be the last point or question that I just offer, is related to both active transportation and transit. Really, it's related to all of them. And it has to do with the draft target goals that relate to increased pedestrian and biking mode splits, but specifically to pedestrian infrastructure. And I'm just curious how this work, what we learned from it, knowing that every trip anywhere begins and ends as a pedestrian trip, and the needs for those parts of our city's infrastructure and communities' infrastructure to be up to speed. Thoughts about when you see things like 100% of our transit being served by safe and convenient pedestrian networks. What are the connection points to funding or shifts and conversations we need to be having about shifts in funding to make sure that city sidewalks and intersections are able to do that?
That is a great question, Mayor Knudsen. This work we're doing right now is agnostic, I guess I would say, towards the funding question. I think what this work implies in advancing the Central Lane Scenario Plan and these goals is that I would hope that it is involved in the discussion, especially when TSPs are updated, and we get to talking about funding and the cost of projects and how that funding is allocated. Speaking for my ODOT and DLCD friends here, I think that the hope is that this helps to inform that conversation about how the jurisdictions are allocating their funding towards these different infrastructure investments. I don't know if that totally answers your question. But...
It does. And I think the part that would just be important is that we have really clear breadcrumbs, so to speak, or to be continued comments included in some of this final reports and information so that those conversations can be picked up effectively.
That's very helpful. If I can add on to that, Ryan and Mayor, one of the things that the city is required to report to DLCD in this major report, as we mentioned, following the RTP update, is how the city will make corrections if you're not on track to meet your targets. So if the city is finding that you're not progressing on your active transportation infrastructure the way that you would like, you will be telling DLCD how you will make changes to meet that target. And for sidewalks, it could be dedicating more funding to constructing sidewalks and repairing sidewalks. That is easier said than done sometimes, but that is the path, no pun intended there, to make the connection to infrastructure investment. And then to your question on pricing, I will say that the pricing of transportation is a big input in the Vision Eval model, which is used to measure progress towards our state and regional greenhouse gas targets. So the cost of transportation in the Central Lane region is a big component in setting these targets. It's a big component of the data that is setting the targets in the numbers basically in your memo. So it is very much taken into account when we are thinking about progress towards our greenhouse gas reduction goals. Mm-hmm. So I just wanted to throw that out there as well. And my last thought on your comment, sorry to interrupt, before I lose my train of thought here, was congestion. That is not a performance measure that the group identified, but there is nothing stopping the city of Eugene from identifying other performance measures in your transportation system plan. And if you are interested in including that in your major report for the city of Eugene, that is also on the table. Well, what we're talking about here is the minimum for the scenario planning requirements.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good. Thank you all. Good questions. Pete, you're up next, sir.
Thank you. I had to remember how to unmute myself. The LTD is supportive of these goals and has actively putting them into our long range mobility plan that we're working on. Things that we understand from looking at it is that we're gonna need more funding too, and it's going to take more operators and dollars and to implement some of these things, and we're going to need a lot of cooperation from our jurisdictional partners, especially in things like putting together the connection points for transit networks and active transportation networks. Are places, of course, where you might see a bus stop, but there's no sidewalk, for a good example. So there's, but like I said, we're supportive of it. We think they're great goals, but where the rubber meets the road, so to speak, we're going to need more money and cooperation to make it work.
Great. Mayor Sean.
Thanks. I think I'm going to start with seconding what Pete said. I think one of the challenges with CFAC continues to be that there's a lot of reporting requirements, but we have infrastructure that is in our plans that is approved already that would help with this as a problem that we need money to sort of implement and build. I mean, Springfield's full of neighborhoods that have half a block of sidewalk that is missing, that if we just could have game-changing or life-changing infrastructure and walking ability if we could just find the money to build it. So that's kind of point one. I did have a question about the access to jobs and services through transit and active transportation. And I've got kind of a technical question here. My job is a telecommuter when I'm not at my other job being mayor. How does that get accounted in that number? Am I counted as having access to active transportation because I only have to step over the dog in the morning?
So, Chris, do you want to go or you want me to go?
Oh, go ahead. And then I was thinking maybe Kelly might have some insight since that's one that's developed that's from the RTP directly. Go ahead, Ryan.
Yeah, I'll start, and then maybe Kelly, if you comment on like how the travel model, regional travel model, do but vision eval and scenario planning model, we include assumptions about how people are getting to work, right, and whether they're not traveling at all for work. So I think that Mary Gordon, that the work from home would show up in the VMT per capita measure in terms of reducing that number of VMT per person, right, for this person not getting to work. Kelly, Tracy, Brian.
No, it's a good question. Is right now what's calculated is those of us who are actually leaving our homes to get somewhere. How is that accessible? The model that we're developing now may handle that a little differently, and we'll be talking with the consultant about what that means, and we can bring a better answer to you back at the next meeting.
Yeah, that would be great. Because I know we have at least one firm up in the Gateway area that still has a significant amount of their workforce telecommuting.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And especially in from a traffic perspective and a transportation perspective, Gateway and International is one of my most challenging sort of areas. Right. So it would be nice to be able to sort of capture and give people credit for something that, impacts the mission of this program.
Yeah, kind of as an aside and a little more weedy of an answer, that's a big question in the kind of the community at large is how do we, there was a huge shift in the last 4 years about where people are traveling and how we're working and how do we accommodate for that in our analytical tools. And we're catching up with that through a lot of kind of survey work to understand people's behavior and how to incorporate that behavior into the analytical tools. So if I may put a note in our agenda here to bring this back to you as a conversation at an upcoming meeting, I would appreciate that.
Yeah, and the rest of the performance measures, I think my feedback is just generally these are really detailed, and and across a pretty complicated system, right? So I still have the question about can we continue to sort of weed this a little bit down to get to the most meaty, most telling performance measures that help us as a group. Obviously, and I don't know who saw it, somebody made a comment about, hey, if we're not hitting our measures, you go on a bad list and you have to report to DLCD about what you're doing to improve your metrics. I just want to make sure that we're all in agreement. We can plan infrastructure, we can build it, right? But I don't act like the city of Springfield doesn't make the decision about what transportation option people use. Right. So it's sort of like we're playing a game of if we build it, they will come. And I'm, a little bit concerned, again, and this is broadly with CFAC because my general read as a technical person is that we're prescribing this too much, is that we're sort of in the mode of, hey, we're going to do a lot of detailed work and then people inherently are going to change behavior. That may possibly work. We could also do a lot of this detail work, which is important work, and we still may not see movement on some of these metrics because, just frankly, the population changes, technology in the market changes, something out of our control changes. And I think that's important to continue to raise our hand about and just describe that as an issue. And I'd be curious if the consultants or ODOT had a response to that.
I guess I could offer. My experience has been in working in this field for 20 years at this point. Has been that it's never one of these tools or one of these applications in a vacuum that moves the needle, right? It really has to be a holistic investment in infrastructure and also the programmatic side of things, right? Like those transportation options programs really do move the needle in terms of helping people understand how to use these tools that we're providing them for, make sure they're actually well used. This process is also focused pretty narrowly in some respects on transportation, and that's intentional by the way that the original central lane scenario planning process was set up. There's the whole conversation around land use, which we're not having here, to be clear, but that obviously supports everything we're trying to do with this transportation focused effort. So I would offer that. Brian, I saw you unmuted too.
Yeah, thank you. That is also along the lines of where I was going. Specifically, to get to ask you a question about teleworking. Teleworking is also a component in that Vision Eval tool. So part of what we're doing is measuring your current progress towards achieving the goal, the regional greenhouse gas goal. So we are accounting for all the telework that's happening in the Central Lane region when we're measuring our current progress now. I'll let Kelly follow up with what is possible through the regional travel model, but I do know that telework has been, I am not a modeler, I'm a planner, but in talking to modelers, telework is very much on the table as a possibility of what is something that can be done now. And so that's something we can think about going forward. I would agree also that CFEC is, there's a holistic approach to reducing greenhouse gas reduction, that extends to the whole state. State agencies, local jurisdictions, and the private sector is what we say. And so the CFEC work is really focused on what the local jurisdictions are responsible for and your share of the work, which is why Ryan mentioned this is really focused on transportation. And we're looking at the performance measures, that track progress of what the city largely has authority over. So that's how we bring everything back together through this CFEC work. With
Yeah.
Take on that.
And I'm going to give you guys a couple more comments, and then I'll let it go again, right? Because the point I'm making is, right, like some of this is our policy work, that is true, but what I keep listening for when we go through this, and some CFEC presentations get it, and some CFEC presentations don't, and I feel like I'm hoping the transportation measures come a little bit more towards understanding what jurisdictions go through, is that some of this we don't control. Like we don't control the market, we don't control. And when I hear you guys talk, I'm not sure I'm hearing that, a deep understanding. I'm hearing you respond to my questions, but not an understanding about what my question is about. Hey, some of this the city just can work around, but the actual measurable outcome is something that is not 100% in the city's control. And I really would love to hear a little bit more just understanding of that we can do this work. It doesn't necessarily mean we're going to get 100% this outcome. And I'll leave it at that. And then the funny joke the last comment I'm going to make is we're all working remotely now, right? It's an MPO. So just make sure that Brenda is getting credit for all these tricks she used.
That's great. She is getting credit for those in your progress towards the greenhouse gas goal for sure. That's very helpful feedback, Mayor. I wrote that down. I will definitely consider that and keep that in mind. As Ryan mentioned, that's something that we would like your feedback on when we give you the implementation chapter to review. It would be helpful to make sure that us and the city staff have captured that sentiment when we are expressing that out to the public. That is very helpful. And the last thing I wanted to say, and so I do not forget, is that ODOT is also providing funding for your local transportation plan update. I needed to put that on the table as well. So unfortunately, we are not doing the major report funding, but we're funding your scenario planning work and your local TSP update. So I had to put that out there, or else my ODOT colleagues would be remiss. Thank you.
Good job, Brian. Thank you. Are there any other comments on this topic? Tracy, you want to add anything in closing?
Yes. So just a kind of getting back to the presentation that we had. So we just wanted to follow up with you all on what the next steps are. We're continuing to work with the jurisdictions to refine these draft targets. We will consider the comments that we heard today as we go back and continue to refine some of these. And we are finalizing the target calculations. Again, a lot of that is based on some updated information that we have access to. So we want to make sure that these are based on the most current information that we have. And we will be taking these back to the project management team, which is all of the jurisdictions working together to finalize this list. We also do have that draft implementation chapter, which they have seen, but we have not yet had a chance to discuss as a group. And so we will get a little bit more direction from the staff there on those elements and then bring back to you to review that draft implementation chapter that Brian just referred to, and updates to these performance measures and targets.
All right. Good deal. Well, thank you all. Thanks, Tracy, Ryan, Brian, and Cody. Thanks for the report. Thanks for the time. And as always, great questions. Mayors, plural, good questions. Just one last comment that I've had that's kind of burning in my head from Mayor Knutson when she said, just about the cost comparative data. I mean, like if I had a postcard that came into my box and said, hey, do you want to save $9 this week? And if the answer to that question was take the bus twice and not run your car, I think that would be a really good marketing point. I'm just saying from my marketing hat here, I think that would be a really good kind of revelation for someone to go, oh, it really does make sense, rather than just dismissing it because it's dismissed out of habit. So great question. You made me think, Mayor. Thank you. Appreciate it. All right, so Kelly, you're up again. We're going to look at this Oregon Metropolitan Planning Organization, our OMPOC 2025 report. You're going to intro it and give us some items. I think also, don't we have to, Paul Thompson, don't we have to make sure we have a representative for the meeting that's coming up soon? Are we missing one? Is that what I'm remembering?
Chair, we passed by that at the start of the meeting when we just decided to defer the election of the MPC chair and vice chair. Right now, you have allowed the two current, well, you did allow in December the two previous OMPOC representatives to continue. However, one of those was Councillor Steve Moe, who no longer is on MPC. The next OMPOC meeting should be 2.5 to 3 months away. So I think we can also defer this discussion till the next MPC meeting.
Perfect. Great. Thank you for clarifying that. Awesome. All right, Kelly. Well, then it's your turn to report again. I'm sure you're getting the habit of it by now, so welcome back.
Thank you. Yeah, OMPOC last met last Friday, actually, January 31st. And just kind of as it mentions in the agenda packet, OMPOC is the Oregon Metropolitan Planning Organization Consortium, and its members are made up of 2 members from each of Oregon's 8 MPOs, and we meet quarterly. LCOG actually has a contract with ODOT to staff and facilitate OMPOC and to provide support to that committee and that commission, so that consortium. And so we get to be very involved in setting the agendas and working with the chairs and the vice chairs throughout the year. The last meeting agenda included election for chairs and vice chair, and OMPOC nominated and voted for Pat Malone to be chair, who is a Benton County commissioner, and Christine Lewis to be vice chair, she's a Metro counselor. And every year OMPOC, the chair and vice chair rotate in an alphabetical order around for MPOs around the state. And so last year, actually, Councillor Moe served as the chair, and he's terming out. So he was a great representative for our region, and we appreciate his involvement on that committee. The next agenda item was the 2025 legislative session discussion, and OMPOC has been working with Jim McCauley, who's the legislative director for the League of Oregon Cities, over the past year to prepare for this upcoming legislative session. Main priorities are projects from the House Bill 2017 that have gone unfinished, a need for more transportation and maintenance in the ODOT budget, and transit funding and transit access to rural areas. Those are some key priority areas. There's a general understanding that there's a lot of demand and also a lot of need, and that transportation operations and maintenance funding will require some big funding sources. Through that meeting, OMPOC did approve its legislative priorities, and those are included in your packet. And those priorities are funding for core operations and maintenance, transportation safety, diversification and indexing of a full range of transportation revenue sources, and additional transit funding, and finally finishing projects in House Bill 2017 and of statewide significance. The those will look very familiar to the League of Oregon Cities priorities and Association of Counties priorities, just because we collectively thought a unified voice about priorities statewide would help to advance some of these priorities and to help for advocacy in general. And then the next item that we talked about was the Oregon Travel Study, which is POG helped to fund out of its budget. It's a statewide travel behavior survey. And to be honest, Mayor Van Gordon, a lot of that data is critical to understanding how people are traveling and it really kind of get at like who's telecommuting, how are people telecommuting and when, and that will feed into the models. And so we're really excited about getting this new data because it's very dated right now. The last survey was done over 10 years ago, and we're different now. So it'll be a really important part for how we are modeling behavior from now on. Let's see here, that gets coded into the travel models, like I mentioned, and helps us make informed decisions about how we make our investments. And we can report back on this with you once that data is weighted and ready to be reported if you're interested. But that will be into the fall of this year, but we can come back and we'd be happy to do so, the leadership team. ODOT provided an update as they always do. They mentioned that a lot of work is starting to happen on the policy front. They finalized a contract for Transportation Safety Action Plan, and that's a plan that gets updated every 5 years. They're asking what are the priorities and interest areas for safety. They're also working on a rail plan update and going to be starting on an Oregon Highway Plan update soon. And that's a comprehensive update that they're excited about. It's a pretty kind of older plan that needs a revamp. The other thing that ODOT's working on is they recently conducted a strategic review. And through that process came up with some potential ways to improve the statewide transportation improvement plan process. They're still investigating ways to improve that process, but it's basically their 4-year outlook on projects that are happening. But what they kind of mentioned is that there's the 4-year strategy and then there's the 20-year plans, and there's not really a bridge in between those two. And so this new process intended to kind of be that bridge. They're developing the framework and trying to figure out how to take this universe of needs from all of our RTPs and transportation system plans and other plans and filter them into priorities over the near term to get to the right mix of projects and program levels to achieve their goals. Some more to come on that, but it could be a lot of work for Dan and Paul, but exciting for the rest of us to see how that manifests. Those were the kind of the key areas of conversation that we had at OMPOC. Every time OMPOC meets, every member provides kind of an update of what's happening in their region, and there's a lot going on region-wide and a lot of interest in similar topic areas that we're talking about here. I'm happy to answer any questions about that or anything else.
Great, Kelly. Thank you. Any questions for Kelly? Kelly, I had a conversation with Representative Lively in a legislative meeting we had on a Saturday at the new City Hall in Eugene, and we were talking about that HB 2017. And in the Navy, they told me that hope is gluing wings on worms. And so I was asking him what kind of hope we had for any of those 2017 projects to really hit the ground running this year. Do you have any update on that or any hope on that for us?
I don't know if I'm the right one to ask. I got stuck on the visual of a worm with wings on it.
Yeah. We're gonna
my
make
brain got stuck.
All right. Well,
Butterfly, Commissioner. You're describing a butterfly.
Yeah, exactly.
That's
All
helpful.
right. Well, thank you very much, Kelly. You did a super job. You had 3 big topics. You did it wonderfully. We appreciate all your knowledge and your expertise. Thank you very much. Our last couple items on our meeting today is our ODOT update. Looks like Vidal is out and Bill Johnson is going to take his lead. So, Bill, if you've got something to give us some great insight on, go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Chair. Vidal had a conflict this morning. He couldn't be here. He did not share any updates with me to share with you. So I do not have anything for you this morning.
All right. I like it. Deep and short. Thank you very much. Our last item is just that TIP, the Transportation Improvement Plan updates. If you had any questions on that, this is the time to bring any of that up. I did noticed in mine the truck charging and fueling station. That's becoming a more hot topic these days than ever before. So kind of interested in seeing where that goes. Anybody else have anything to change or add on that? If not, we are going to move to adjourn this meeting. I want to just leave you with this last thought. Life is a steep climb up a rugged mountain, so enjoy the view while you're there. So have a great day, everyone. Appreciate all your time. Make it a good one. See you later. We are adjourned.